Hello, 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 hello. Test, 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 test. Yeah, and for those of you online, we're going to be starting in around 12:10, so in about 5 6 minutes. So thank you. All right, folks. Welcome. So, a little background on things before we get jumped in. And I've got a handout. Some. Yeah, please. Uh, I'm going to refer to some pages in the handout along the way. And there's a resource page on the last page, which is most of what I'm given today, so you can do your own homework with it. Okay. Um, this program has been about 16, 17 years in the making. And about 6 months ago, I had to do a major revamp just because the information and such is exploding at such a accelerating rate. So there's a bunch of new stuff that I have based on science and spirituality and just things that are coming down the pipe. Okay. Here's the key. In these next 2.5 hours or so, I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you. Don't worry if you get overwhelmed. Your soul is taking it all in. Okay. And what I suggest is when we're done, in the days and weeks and months ahead, years ahead, it's just let it simmer and it will come to you. Okay. It will start to make more sense. There's a number of things over the years when I first read it or heard it, I'm like, what? And so we got to play with it. Okay. So the other thing, and Mike kind of reinforced this the last couple of Sundays, the way we ultimately change and grow is when we can consider possibilities above and beyond what we've created or what we've made true. So there's going to be many things I'm going to give you today that perhaps you've never heard of or thought about. There might be some things that, oh yeah, I'll reinforce it for you. But the things you haven't heard, they seem kind of really out there. You've been jolted, okay? And so I'm planting seeds. And the key is with the seeds that are planted, start to play with it. And little by little, it will start to make sense. There are many things in my counseling and coaching business that in the beginning sessions, I just plant seeds with people, knowing it's not going to make sense or fit initially. But I'm planting a seed. And I tell people, if you hang with me, you keep coming back, eventually it will click if you allow it. Okay. And usually that's what happens. Okay. So be open, receptive, and curious to what I lay out. Okay. Everything I'm giving you, it's out there. Most of it is not mainstream for various reasons that I'll explain along the way. However, as things are getting to the point, mainstream media and such are putting it out there more. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, you're probably going to see it more and more, one way or another. Okay. Either by choice or some of it will just end up in your face, whether you want it to or not, kind of thing. Okay. If you have questions, I would rather us wait for questions near the end, and I'll entertain them. So if you have a question, write it down for yourself or whatever, and then we'll entertain it. And if I don't have the answer, I'll make it up. Okay? So, all right. So, we're going to go 26,000 years and about 500 million light years away. Okay? And the ancients and the prophets of many cultures from around the world over the years, okay, over the centuries, as well as some modern prophets and seers and psychics, have talked about a shift in the ages, okay, a grand awakening, and things like that. And they talked about these changes both happening with the earth itself as well as humanity and nature itself, the animal kingdom, the winged ones, and such. Okay, and it's not just about what's happening on this planet; it's happening throughout the cosmos, and I'll explain that more as we go along. Okay, we're kind of the end result of what's been happening out there for eons. Okay. And much of what will give you, because it's about cycles and such, much of this has happened before. The difference with what's going on today or at this current time is it's almost like the last hurrah. That, especially for humanity, if we don't get it this time, it's going to get more and more difficult for us. Okay. But the potentiality and the opportunity for us literally to create heaven on earth has never been like this before. It's always been there, but the potentiality and the opportunity is like never before. And all of us have chosen this on a soul level to be here at this particular time and place and such. Okay, so there's no accident that you're here. Just like there's no accident that this particular you're here. Something sparked you to learn more about this. Okay, just like in me, when I started traveling around the world, all of a sudden I got more curious and I started playing with this. And 15, 16 years later, here I am. Okay. And so the prophets and the seers and such, and the mystics, they spoke of not just of a wisdom, but they spoke of warnings. So some of the things I'm going to lay out, it's not intended to scare you or frighten you, but it is a potentiality. Okay. Don't let the fear get the best of you. Okay. Because regardless of what happens to any of us on this planet, we never die. We never cease to exist. We just transform from one energy form to another. Okay. But if you have fear, fear is an unhealthy attachment to loss. But nothing is lost in the universe. On the soul level, nothing is lost. It just transforms, it recycles. Okay. So be careful how your ego, where it might go with some of this. Okay. And try not to let it dominate you. Okay. All right. And one of the biggest things, one of the biggest transformations that's going to happen on this planet with humanity is moving more from the ego perspective or strictly our human perspective to beginning to come back to the soul perspective. Because it's a totally different reality and way of living and being when you can see things from the soul vantage point, not just your human ego vantage point. True? But many people, they're still stuck in the human ego part of it. And that's part of where fear and all that ends up driving the bus too much. So they talk about warnings. Even Yeshua, I will lay out some of what he talked about in terms of a warning. But they, more importantly, they talked about they wanted to be heard and they wanted to be understood and they wanted to be taken seriously. Okay. And they also want us to see the potentiality of this change and that it's a call for love, to coming back to love within ourselves, within humanity, and with everything around us, seen and unseen. Okay. So let's start with. Uh, why aren't I moving, Chuck?
Let me see. Is the clicker on? There you go. Turn the power of the clicker on and off again, David. Just click it, turn it off, and turn it on again. Sometimes that'll help it.
Top. Oh, okay.
On the side.
Eh,
Let me see. Give it here.
I might have. I hit it, didn't I? Still not working though.
Did it work? Is it working? It shouldn't be that big of a deal. You shouldn't have to crush it.
It was working earlier.
There you go. Now you got it.
What am I doing? What am I?
No, you just hit the arrows.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. All right. So here's your first joke. Old thinking and believing versus new thinking and believing and truths. First of all, here's my definition or my distinction between what's true and what's the truth. What's true is something you've made in time. What's the truth will not change over time. It has no impact on time. It's truth always. Case in point, how many of you believed in Santa Claus? How many of you believe it's a white, a white beard and a red suit and he's got a sleigh and all that versus the spirit of Christmas? Okay, so when we were little, we had this truth of this actual person. And then we realized through various ways, oh, that's not quite it. Okay, so there's many things that we've made true that we later might realize for various ways and reasons it's not the truth. So the truth will change over time. What is the truth will not change. Okay, time will have no bearing. Okay, so old thinking. The apocalypse was the end of time. It's not really the end of time, it's just the end as we've known it. That's what cycles are. They come and they go. Okay, so one cycle is ending, a new one is beginning. A new way of living and being is in our midst. One is ending, one is starting. Okay. The Armageddon meant disaster. We're doomed. What it really means is the final battle. That we're gonna reach a plateau where the battle will be over. It'll be done. Okay. The second coming was what? This guy's gonna come down and save us. Yeshua, Jesus. Okay. The new thinking and belief and truth, the apocalypse actually is a revelation of truth. Many things are going to be exposed that we've made true to realize it's not the truth. And that's already beginning to happen politically, economically, socially, environmentally, you name it. Okay. And that's going to increase. Okay. The Armageddon was about in this cycle, old systems are no longer useful and helpful in every facet of society. And these new systems are starting and ways are coming on board, okay? And that's really what the Armageddon was about. And the final battle is the end of the reign of fear and moving to love and acceptance and compassion, forgiveness and such, okay? The second coming, it was never really about the return of Christ. It was about us rising as love to meet our beloved in the higher dimensions of the Father's house. In other words, it's us going up in consciousness to meet that energy and that way. And that's what this new cycle is all about. Okay? Okay. And it's about us doing the work to make that happen. It's not about Christ saving us. We're already saved. We just don't believe it or we don't live that way. So he's got to come down and help us. Good luck. Okay. Because when he came down the first time, what happened? And if he came down again, what would happen? Okay. Yeah. All right. You've heard the phrase New Age. My definition of New Age, it's a span of time. What happened thousands of years ago is now just being reinvented. Reiki, energy healing, vibration, sound healing, all those kind of things. They were going on thousands of years ago. We're just remembering. And that's what cycles are. They forget, we remember. We forget, we remember. We struggle, we progress. We struggle, we progress. Okay. So New Age is just we're remembering what's been forgotten by the ancients and stuff. We might be doing it a little different than they did thousands of years ago. Well, we're doing it nonetheless. Okay. So, um, and I'd like you to think in terms throughout this program and when you leave today. Everything boils down to cycles, frequency, vibration, and I would entertain the unseen much more than the seen, the unknown much more than the known. Okay, and I'll explain that more as we've gone. So these times they're not about the end. It's not the end times, it's just the end as we've known it in almost every facet of our living. Okay, so in 1220 or 1221 of 12, I had the opportunity to be in Mayan land in Chichen Itza on that particular day, and it was a grand celebration of people all over the world. And this is a picture I took. We were there for the sunrise at Chichen Itza, and the whole day was, like I say, quite a celebration of ushering in the new era, as the Mayans proclaimed that 2012 of 21 was the end of the Mayan calendar. Okay, many people took that was the doomsday. That when the calendar end, things on the planet were going to end. So a lot of people were doing some insane things. Okay, to protect themselves, and some of these people that were doing insane things, they actually died. So the very thing they were trying to prevent, they ended up dying because of it. That's what fear and such can do to you. Okay. So the Mayans and the Aztecs, they had a calendar, and there's a lot of symbolism and such. It can be very confusing. Um, I've played with it enough to be dangerous, but I'm not an expert at it. Trust me. Okay, but they were these four squares in the middle have symbols in them, and they were the four elements of air, water, fire, and the earth. Okay. And so they're prophesizing. So those four squares, the first one on the top left is air, and that was the first world age. And there was mass catastrophe on the planet, but there was also shortly after that an awakening. Okay. The second square on the top right is the earth, and so things happened on the earth itself that caused a catastrophe. Okay. The bottom left is the fire or the heat. And so things happened on the planet at that particular time that caused problems. Okay. And the last square on the bottom right is water. Things happened with water. Okay. In the very center is an angry face. That's the fifth world age. That's where we are today. Okay. Some people have said, and I tend to agree to a certain extent, it's the sun. It's the sun is angry at us. From the Mayans and the Aztecs, they were saying it's about an earthquake. Okay. The last several months, what's been happening on the planet? Lots of earthquakes. In fact, there was just two major ones. There was one a day or two earlier, and there was one like last week or so. So earthquakes are becoming more prevalent. Okay. But the elements of the planet, and they have a consciousness. So they're shaking us up, folks. They're saying, will you guys get your act together? Okay. And so as the earth is changing, and there's this thing called time. And in the Mayan pyramids, they had 9 levels. And each level was a span of time. And each level ushered in something particular that happened in their culture or on the planet in general. And each level, as you go up, each level is 20% shorter than the previous one. So things that were happening in millions or billions of years, by the time we got to the ninth level, which was the end of the calendar, things that would take millions of years are now happening in days or weeks or months. Does anybody feel like time is speeding up? My conclusion of that is as the frequencies get stronger, more intense, it gives us the potential that time goes quicker. Okay, so, and they kind of illustrated that things that would take millions of years are now happening in just months or weeks or whatever, because the frequency is getting stronger and more intense. Okay. Teresa and I were in Egypt in 2024 with the Edgar Casey group. Powerful time, and we had an opportunity as a group to spend private time in the Great Pyramid of Giza. And we spent about an hour or so in the King's Chamber. A very powerful and transforming experience. Okay. As we were leaving, most of the group went left, and Teresa and I and a few others ended up going right. She's learned over the years that nothing is normal with me. I don't follow the crowd. Anyways, totally by accident, we end up in the Queen's Chamber. It was much smaller, and there was clutter in this chamber, and we were like, what, what's going on? And you see in this carving, there's literally like a table where it almost looked like a window frame in this. And I'm like, there's no windows in this place. What is this about? Anyways, what really intrigued me was what they carved in the wall. They were saying the same thing that the Mayans were saying. They were expressing time and frequency, and things are getting shorter. Okay. Now, these two civilizations are approximately 3,000 years apart, and Egypt and Chichen Itza, Yucatan is about 3,000 miles apart, or 7,000 miles apart. How did they know? But yet they're all saying the same thing. And if you go to the different cultures around the world, and you see what their ancient civilizations, they might express it slightly differently, but they're saying the same things. That something's going to happen. Okay. So there's four major things that are, and before we go to this one, I'd like to point out some key events that have happened over the last 4, 5, 6 years, and especially this year, astrologically and such. Okay. Astrology and numerology are some of the oldest science in the world. And those two sciences are things that we have forgotten, but more and more we're coming back to. More and people are waking up to astrology and numerology. Okay. So there were 3 events that happened on 12/21 of 20. First event was that's the winter solstice. Okay, and that happens every year on around the 21st of December. The second thing that happened in that particular year, though, was the great conjunction, the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn. And they were visible in our night sky, okay, much more than in other nights and such. And it was a celebration of a symbol of hope and new beginnings were becoming more prevalent. And we officially moved into the age of Aquarius around that time. And I'm going to show you in a little bit the difference of consciousness based on this 26,000 year cycle and the Earth's wobble going through all 12 constellations. It takes just under 26,000 years. And depending on where the Earth is, which constellation, believe it or not, there is a rise or fall in human consciousness. And we've been on the downward spiral. Pisces was the beginning of us starting the upward journey, and Aquarius was really stepping to the doorway and the potentiality of higher consciousness and greater love. Okay. And so those events on that winter solstice were ushering this potentiality of what's happening. Okay. Astrology this year is off the charts. And it's loaded with celestial happenings. Okay. On a weekly, monthly basis, this year is insane. Okay. And examples. This year, the Chinese New Year is the fire horse. And the fire horse, it's a 60-year cycle. And see if anybody can relate to this. It's the fire element, and it's very high energy, and it's about taking bold steps, rapid change, endings, and new beginnings. The downside of it is, it has a lot of impulsivity, burnout, and volatility. Can anybody relate to that? Okay. I ended my practice in the end of March of this year after 23 years. I gave up my license, I gave up the physical space. Endings, beginnings. I'm doing it differently now. I'm not going to subscribe to the program anymore. Been there, done that. Okay. And that's happening with a lot of people in various ways. Business, relationships, a lot of endings, and there's a lot of new beginnings on the horizon. Okay. There was in early June of this year, there was a Venus and Jupiter conjunction. And that was a union, a celestial union of prosperity. So the planets, the universe is ushering this in. It's helping us. It's kind of saying, here we go, folks. Join the party. Okay? So spiritually, Venus joining Jupiter symbolizes expansion to love and self-worth, confidence and emotional abundance, getting your own emotional house in order, reconciling the stuff that no longer serves you emotionally and such. And this alignment was to encourage people to recognize their own value and self-worth. Come back to the innocence and the love and the light that you've always been. Let go of the old programming. When your mother told you you were no good, your third grade teacher said you're a mess and whatever. It's time to shed that. Okay, and these planets and these alignments and conjunctions are giving us that opening. Okay. Jupiter will magnify and enhance Venus's, because Venus is the planet of love. She's the feminine aspect. Okay. And so with Jupiter aligning with Venus, it was expressing that power of love and the higher energy, the heart energy, coming back to the heart. Not so much our thinking in logic state, but coming back to more of our emotional and feeling state. And it's about this conjunction was about attraction, creativity, positive change. Seeing change as a positive thing rather than a burden. And it was also about embracing our joys. Here's the interesting thing about joy. When you decide to go after your joy, you begin to realize what blocks your joy. And you begin to realize how the ego, oh, you're not supposed to be happy, knock that off. So the more you go after what you want, the more you will begin to realize what's been blocking you. And the key is not to be swayed by that. Okay? This past week, how many of you are familiar with the term the Lion's Gate? A couple people. So this, from July 28th to August 12th, we were in the Lion's Gate. And it's the alignment of Earth, and the sun is in Leo, the constellation of Leo, and the star is Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky, was much more vivid. And so there was an alignment between Leo and Sirius and such. Okay. And this alignment, the Lion's Gate, is literally bringing heaven to earth. And Sirius is the brightest star, so it's the spiritual sun. Okay. And it symbolizes high vibration, awakening, releasing the limiting beliefs and the old identity, gaining the clarity of purpose, and setting those intentions. So there was a lot of people all over the world this past week that were really connecting to these energies and setting those intentions, focusing on what we didn't want, and or letting go of what we didn't want and putting the energy towards what we did want. And it's a time of incredible upgrades. Now, ancient Egypt again. They honored the return of Sirius in the night sky, because when they saw Sirius, they realized that was the beginning of the Nile flooding. The waters were going to rise on the Nile, and everything in their lives, from the building of the pyramid to agriculture and such, were based on the Nile. And so when the Nile flooded, then they understood that in due time they would recede a little bit, and agriculture could happen again. They could begin to plant. Okay, so they honored when Sirius showed up back in the night sky. And many ancient civilizations based their seasons on the stars and the planet and the movement of the planets and such. Okay, so they knew when Sirius was back in the sky, oh, planting season is nearby. Okay. Leo is the solar heart. As Sirius is our star sun, Leo is the solar heart. And so it's life force. It's about courage. The lion has courage. It's the willingness to be bold and to shine your light. And it's bringing spirit to matter, to form. It's bringing what's out there into creation, into form. Okay? And it's the completion of a cycle. Hello. And it's a sign that your hard work is beginning to pay off. And that prosperity is coming your way, if you will allow it and entertain it. Okay? The last day of the Lions Gate, was this August 12th. And ironically, we had a solar eclipse. It was partial in parts of the US. In parts of Europe and Scandinavian countries and Russia, they experienced the total eclipse. And the eclipse is about transformation. It's about illumination. And here again, it's about endings and beginnings. And it's about, even though the moon covers the sun, so we have this temporary moment of darkness, the light is always there. Never lose focus of the light within, as well as the light out there. The candle flame, unfortunately, went out. Just above the wick is the dark and empty space. I call it the sacred void, the sacred emptiness. You can literally stick an unlit match all the way through it and pull it out, and it will not light. It is completely empty. Most flames, if you look closely, there's a thin blue tint that surrounds that void. That's the divine. Around that is the actual light of the flame. All three elements of the void, the darkness, and the divine and the light all exist simultaneously. Okay? The key is, in our darkness, never lose sight of the light, because it's within the darkness as you will find a greater understanding of the light and how it's always been there. So they each have a purpose. The darkness is not to be avoided or shunned or denied. Most of my life, my insights, my whatever you want to call it, have come from my darkest and most difficult times. And this past year was probably one of my most difficult times. But I'm probably much more loving and insightful and whatever than I've ever been. And it was because of that darkness that I learned acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, and looking at things from the soul perspective, not just, yeah, from this perspective, it sucks, it's not fair, it's not right, how can this happen, kind of stuff. Okay. So the heavens, if you will, the universe, the planets are ushering things in because the time is ripe. Okay. Jesus had a parable in the Bible where he talked about the grapes on the vine being ripe or unripe. It's either ready for picking and wine or it's not quite there yet. Okay. The way he was intending that for the human psyche, or the human consciousness, we're all at different stages, just like those grapes. We're all at different stages of ripeness. Some of us are more ripe than others. It's not right or wrong, it just is. Okay. So the key is now the universe is really trying to get us going to be more ripe and more ready. Okay. So anybody experiencing what seems like chaos, even call it insanity at times. Okay. Chaos is uncertain order. Within the chaos, within what seems like chaos, it's all divinely guided. But because it doesn't make sense to us, because we don't understand it, we see it as chaos, it's not right, and whatever. So the more you can see everything that's playing out, it has an intent to it. And if you can work with it rather than resist it or deny it, you will in due time find that intention. Okay? There's been 4 cycles within the grand cycle. And part of this is was predicted by a gentleman by the name of Nostradamus. And then we had this guy by the name of Edgar Casey. And then we had, believe it or not, Carl Jung, who was a Swiss psychiatrist. And then we've had many more recent prophets and mystics that are saying the same things. But Nostradamus and Casey specifically mentioned 2026 and 2027 as pivotal years. Okay. And they spoke of 4 major themes: climate and environmental crisis, economic crisis, political / constitutional crisis, and a spiritual crisis. Okay. And let's start with the climate and the environmental crisis. Would you agree that the climate, pretty much all over the planet, is changing? Okay. It's not an isolated incident, it's happening all over the planet. And this has happened 4 times previously. The ice caps are melting. Okay. So this is in Alaska. The one on the left is 1909. The latest I could find was around 2004. Same spot. Quite dramatic in terms of the melting. The Blue Glacier in upper Washington State. Okay. 1982, 2022. Here again, quite dramatic. Okay. Science says that the ice caps melting on the planet could potentially raise the sea level on the planet 200 feet. That's a lot of water, folks. Luckily, it's happening gradually. Okay. So pay attention to water. The last Avatar movie was about water. Go figure. Okay. And there were some subtle messages in that movie about the resistance as well as those that are on board and working with the changes and such, and those that were resisting and whatever. Okay. Um, so climate change is, and this is part of a cycle. It happens. This was going to happen regardless of whether we were here or not. The only thing humanity is doing, unfortunately, we're accelerating the process. We're moving it along at a quicker pace. Water current, we go from a warming and cooling on the planet. We're currently in the warming. So the ocean waters are getting warmer, which means there's more moisture coming into the atmosphere around the planet. And this would explain why we have more intense storms and more lightning and things like that. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I think it was uh, Wednesday or Thursday of last week, we had a thunderstorm. I woke up around 2 in the morning and there was flashes of lightning. They were really quick and intense. At first, I thought the police were out on the street because I thought it was, and it lasted for about an hour, hour and a half. I had never seen it like that. There wasn't much thunder with it. It was just bolts, flashes of lightning. And because there's a lot more charged particles now in the air and such, and the waters are heating up, storms are becoming more violent and frequent and such. Okay. Okay. So Casey and Nostradamus, they honored this. They knew this was going to happen and they predicted it. Okay. And they also spoke of cycles within cycles. And there's 3 cycles that are happening right now on the planet, all over the planet. And see if you can relate to this. First is the cycle of climate change. The warming and the cooling, and the earth is warming, like I said. Okay. Economic disparity around the planet and the distribution of resources is getting less and less. That was predicted by these 2. Okay. And as that's going on, innovation is exploding. AI and such, okay? The things I've been able to track down that probably weren't there 5 years ago when I first did this, okay? Things are exploding for various reasons in terms of innovations. Unfortunately, there are many things that have been discovered that have been stifled for the powers that be and the greed and all that. That's still going on. Frequency healing, light sound healing, those kind of things. Okay. All right. But more and more, the innovation is getting out there. Okay. And that's important to realize. Now, here's a fascinating cycle, the cycle of human conflict. When the magnetic field is strong on the planet, we're more cooperative. We get along with each other better. When the magnetic field of the earth is weak, we get more violent. We have more conflict. We have more us versus them going on. Does anybody see that? And we're now at the weakest point. And it's going to go in through 2027, and then the magnetic field will start to get stronger. And so we should be getting more cooperative. But right now, we're in the weakest phase of it. And that's part of what is explaining a lot of the violence and the acting out that's going on. It's no accident. And the fact that it's happening all over the planet, not just isolated, okay? And it's not just humans. The animal kingdom and such it's happening there as well, okay? So those 3 cycles are happening right now within the grand cycle, okay? How many of you read the book, the series, The Self-Esteem Prophecy? I've been encouraging people to reread it now because there's 6 of the 12 insights that I believe are much more crucial right now than when Redfield wrote the book and it was published in 93. Okay. So I'd just like to highlight the 6 major insights out of these. Okay. The first is the critical mass. And this refers to a spiritual awakening. Oop, thank you. This refers to a spiritual awakening happening on the planet. Okay. And it happens to meaningful coincidence and synchronicities because this is becoming more the coincidence and the synchronicities as the frequencies get stronger and we're moving up in the dimensions. Synchronicity and that are going to become much more heightened. Okay. And so your intuition is going to become more and more crucial. Follow your gut or your higher, wiser, intuitive mind. Okay. Not so much your logic. Follow your intuition. Even though it might not make sense in the moment, trust it. The longer now, the world and science is verifying this. The universe is an incredible spiritual design that we're only beginning to understand. And there's a master plan to this. And our ego and that is trying to control and understand this. And we get to a point and science is now admitting and acknowledging there has to be an intelligent mind. There has to be something divine that's driving all this. And more scientists are beginning to acknowledge that and admit that we don't know, we can only go this far in explaining it. And then we have to give it to the power greater than ourselves. Okay. A matter of energy. Einstein said everything is energy. And more that's becoming the case. Everything is energy. Okay. That cycle of conflict is a struggle for power. The ego will naturally compete for power with other people. Okay. And so that's where a lot of these power struggles and control or drama things are going on. Okay. I'm right and you're wrong kind of stuff. It's all about power. Okay. And it's all about fear, not love. It's all about control rather than acceptance and such. Okay. And so that's understandable what's happening right now. It's all coming to a head. Okay. And in due time, it will be flushed out. Okay. But sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. We have to go down before we go up. Okay. And that's kind of where we're at. The message of the mystics. More and more the message from the ancients as well as the masters and whatever, the Yeshuas, the Buddhas and such are coming more to the forefront. A lot of the lost scriptures are coming back, okay, being found and delivered. Way of mastery, A Course in Miracles. They were a new version of what Jesus was saying thousands of years ago. He's now saying, guys, this is what I really meant. Okay. Channeling is becoming more prevalent. Okay. I channel, Therese channels, and we can all channel if we open up to it. Okay. When I first was writing my book, I was channeling, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know I was channeling. But there was things I would write, and after I would write, I would say, who the hell did that? Where did that come from? Okay. The last one is clearing the past. A big part of ascension, folks, and moving into the higher dimensions is to clear your clutter, your emotional house. Reconcile those wounds of the little boy or the little girl. And once you understand the pattern that you've created through your thoughts and beliefs and such, And you realize that pattern could also have been in your past lives. But when you reconcile the pattern and you reframe the beliefs and you come back to that love and that innocence and that goodness, that's a big part of the ascension process. And each person that does it impacts the collective. And each time you heal, you also help the generations before you, and you help the generations to come. Okay? So you're not just helping yourself, you're helping the whole of humanity, both past and present and future. Okay? So I strongly encourage you, if you haven't read it, read the books. If you have read it, it's another one of those texts that you read and you go, well, I don't remember that kind of thing. Okay? So if you're so inclined.
His Houston librarian would tell us he had an amazing selection downstairs of the James Redfield book.
All right. How many of you have read The Way of Mastery? Okay. I first came across this text. I was reading A Course in Miracles before this, but around 2015, 16, I connected with The Way of Mastery. I actually find The Way of Mastery a little easier to digest and entertain than ACIM, but they're both, every line you read, it's the exact opposite of how we've learned to do it and work it, okay? But when I first read In the Way of the Heart, lesson 6, when I first read this passage from Yeshua, I'm like, oh, he's talking about what I'm offering here. So, therefore, for now, beloved friends, be you therefore at peace. We said this year, the way of the heart, that we would indeed speak ever more directly and even more forcefully to you. He's not sugarcoating it anymore. Okay? For the time comes quickly when the planet will be no longer willing to tolerate untidy house guests. That's a key line. And Rumi wrote a few poems where he references the untidy house guest that are not willing to vibrate at the frequency of being to which the planet herself is preparing to move. The planet is moving, the cosmos is moving into a different dimension. Okay? Therefore, be not caught by coming home one day and discovering that the landlord has changed the locks and you have not a place to rest your head. Rather, become the living embodiment of love and journey with your Holy Mother into an entirely new dimension of being. And never forget to sing, laugh, dance, and play along the way. Another thing that's important in this ascension process, in what seems like insanity and chaos, is to take yourself lightly. The reason angels can fly is because they take themselves lightly. Okay? We need to do that. It's serious, but travel with a light heart, a joyful heart, an appreciative heart. Okay? But take it seriously. Don't deny it. Don't pretend it's not happening. Okay? Powerful message, he said. Okay? The Hopi Indians, the Blue Stars. Many will appear to have lost their souls in these final days. So intense will be the nature of the changes that those who are weak in spiritual awareness will go insane. Awareness and spiritual awareness will go insane, for we are nothing without spirit. And one of the things that Casey and Nostradamus were very specific on is we have to come back to spirit, knowing ourselves and our soul. We've lost that more and more in various reasons. And we've been programmed for that to happen. We have to begin to unwind that within ourselves. Okay, and that's what many of the mystics and the masters have been saying. And the elders now that have been coming forward from all different cultures are saying the same thing. Okay. When I was in Peru, and let me, I'm going to go forward a little bit here. When I was in Peru, Chichen Itza, in 2011, and we were on the grounds of Chichen Itza on 11/11 at 11:11 a.m. The energies were incredible. When I first landed in Cusco, my roommate and I, we were a mess. Okay. I was 2 in the morning. I'm wandering down the streets of down Cusco. And at 2 in the morning, I run into a drumming circle. It was incredible, powerful time. But this is what we saw in the sky over the Andes. The feminine was rising. There's the womb, the cosmic womb. And we're moving from a time in the 26,000 year cycle. There's 5 increments of 5,200 years apiece. It's been feminine, masculine, feminine. We've been in the masculine for the last 5,000 years. This next era is both. It's the blending, the merging of the masculine and feminine. It's not either or now, it's both. Gender will not matter. And we can already see that happening with gays, transgenders, and such. Okay. And that was happening thousands of years ago. Gender didn't matter so much. Okay. But the heavens were giving us a message when we were in Machu Picchu in a very wonderful and glorious and powerful way. And 11 is a master number. It's a portal. So they were saying, yes, it's time for the feminine to rise. Okay. All right. So there was a guy by the name of Vince Bartos. He wrote a book a number of years ago, around 2012, called Solar Rain. And he came up with this equation that from the far reaches of our Milky Way, cosmic rays are coming, plasma, and what's called the Birkeland currents. And I'll explain more of these in a moment. And what's also called the Higgs field. Okay. So this is cosmic energy that's coming, and it comes to the sun, and it does its thing with the sun in the terms of solar winds and rays and flares and such. And then those come to the earth, and they impact the earth's outer core, and they go all the way into the mantle plumes in the earth, in the core of the earth. And it impacts the ocean waters and such. Do you see how things are connected? And it's all invisible. Most of it we can't see, but we can feel it. We know it exists at some level. Okay. One of the things I've recently began to really appreciate is that the unseen and the unknown are really where the action is, much more than what our senses can depict. Okay. By the way, he had some incredible stuff on his website, and the powers that be about 6-7 years ago now took him out. Things being stifled. Okay. How many of you today versus maybe 5-6 years ago, 10 years ago, when you look at the sun, you can't quite look at it without sunglasses or without squinting? Okay, the sun is heating up. and getting more intense, okay? And we're in the midst of a solar cycle 25. It's a 9 to 13 year cycle. And in this cycle, we go from minimum solar activity to maximum, okay? Nothing is normal anymore. And we're 2 years ahead of the prediction of the maximum. We're already in the maximum. And so we're a year and a half, almost 2 years ahead of being in the maximum, okay? So the sun is giving us a lot of solar rays and plasma and such, okay? Things that are unseen are temporary, and the things that things that are seen are temporary, and the things that are unseen is eternal. And I'd like to read. Um, Annie had sent me something a time ago um, that was written by Gandhi, and he speaks of the unseen. There is a indefinable, mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it, though I do not see it. It is the unseen power which makes itself felt and yet defies all proof. Because it is so unlike all that I perceive through my senses. It transcends the senses. But is it possible to reason out the existence of God to a limited extent? I do dimly perceive that with everything around me is ever changing, ever dying, there is an underlying all that change, a living power that is changeless, that holds it all together, that creates, dissolves, and recreates. That informing power or spirit is God. And since nothing else I see merely to the senses can or will persist, He alone is. And is this power benevolent or malevolent? I see it as purely benevolent. For I can see that in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists. Hence, I gather that God is life, truth, light. He is love. He is the supreme God. Powerful. But then he writes another paragraph, and this will take you back a little bit. So your ego is not going to like some of this. I confess that I have no arguments to convince, to reason. Faith transcends reason. All I can advise is not to attempt the impossible. I cannot account for the existence of evil by any rational method. To want to do so is to be co-equal with God. I am therefore humbled enough to recognize evil as such, and I call God long-suffering and patient, precisely because, and here's a jolt, He permits evil in the world. I know He has no evil in Him, and yet if there is evil, He is the author of it, and yet untouched by it. Now, a few years ago, I came up with a definition of divine love that kind of fit with this last paragraph. So, divine love is the unconditional love and acceptance of the spirit of all that exists. In other words, God allows it all. We have this thing called free will, free choice. That is the ultimate of love, is freedom. And so you have this free will. And so how evil comes about, if you will, is when we don't reconcile our wounds. Because if I'm hurting in the depths of me, consciously and especially unconsciously, I'm going to hurt someone else or something else. And if I'm not in touch with my soul agreement, because I might have agreed to do some evil things, if I'm not in touch with all that, can you see how we don't treat things out of love? We treat it totally as a condemnation, a sin. And Yeshua had no word for sin. His word was sata, which means you're off the mark. You've gone astray. Welcome to the club. Anybody gone astray? And God allows it all. The unconditional love and acceptance of the spirit of all that exists. So your free will and your soul agreement is what's driving your bus. And if you're not in touch with that, if you're more unconscious, can you see how stuff happens in not so good ways? And then you wonder, why did I do that? Okay. Consider things that are unseen and unknown to us are the most important and powerful and life enhancing. That's the other thing I'd like you to take away is begin to realize that the unseen is really where the action is. And your unknowns is where the deeper love and lessons to your life lie, much more than the known or the familiar. Okay? It is the realm of the unlimited, the realm of pure love, its true reality. Without it, matter, you and I would not exist in human form. Even though we don't see this energy, we feel it. And we are affected by it. It's there with us, within us, and for us. This energy is plasma, ether, and our aura, among other things. Our role is to acknowledge this energy, begin to believe it, embrace it, and connect to this unseen, unknown energy in order to make it more seen and known. Thus, it seeks to expand our consciousness and the unlimited potential and the enhancing power. So there's, what time is it?
Should be a bio break.
Yeah. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Those that are new to the area, there's bathrooms downstairs also? If it's your first time in our building? Like you? Anybody else that needs help? Remember, you gotta eat the food and the car. And the library is decent. I found all of the James Redfield books. I didn't even know we had so many.
We kept them all, as many of them, some went to the sale.
David, when you get a second, can I see your Venmo again? Can I take a
You
photo
what?
of your, can I take a photo of your
Oh,
Venmo?
yeah.
Thank you so much. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You should. So did you have a handout? I came in late.
Hmm?
Did you have a handout?
Yeah.
I came in.
You didn't get one? Okay. Do me a favor. I'll get your email. Oh, wait a minute. I might have Thank you. So we'll go ahead and get started again. Anybody have a burning question or a comment about where things are at so far? Making sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to highlight three forces that are invisible. One being plasma, one being what's called the Birkeland currents, and the other is I'm having a senior moment. What do they call them? The Higgs field. Sorry, the Higgs field. Okay. So the sun releases plasma, and as we're having more of these solar winds and solar flares, okay, this is what part of what creates the northern lights or the southern lights, depending on the hemisphere you're at. And what's happening as these charged particles that come from the sun hit our atmosphere and magnetic field, depending on how they hit the atmosphere, we get these waves of different colors. And because we're having a lot more solar activity, the northern lights, especially in the northern hemispheres, are much more predominant. And I think this is another way that the divine is operating and showing us what the fifth dimension and beyond looks like in terms of the colors and the glories and the allness of it all. Okay. So the first one I'd like to highlight is, and just realize that science has said 97% of the universe is undetectable by the human senses. And when I first read that a number of years ago, I said to myself, I don't know squat. I think I do. Okay. But your senses, our senses are not windows, they're more translators. And so they're going to interpret what it takes in, and it's going to give it an often a distorted interpretation based on what it knows. Okay. So our senses aren't so reliable in many respects. And because these frequencies and things are much higher, that's another reason why we can't see them without a telescope or things like that. Okay. And what they thought was empty space is actually a whole bunch of stardust and particles and waves that are invisible. So there's empty space, and I'll show you from the Webb telescope how they found that, wow, there is things in this empty space, that it's all gases and all that kind of stuff. So out there, nothing is really empty as we make it out to be. So the first example is the Birkeland currents. And this was discovered in the late 1800s. And what they discovered, and they built on Christian Birkeland's discovery, is that the cosmos is one big current of energy, of electricity. And they've actually discovered through telescopes that it's like a tightly woven, these currents are tightly woven weaves that almost mirror and look like our DNA helix. But it runs throughout the entire cosmos. And this current is mixed in with the plasma, okay? And so the universe is one big river of electric energy, if you will, that's constantly flowing all through the universe. And they're finding that these currents is actually part of what connects the sun to our different planets in the solar system. And that what connects in our solar system, this current is connecting to the other solar systems and to the other solar systems and all that. So it's like a web that's throughout the universe, and that everything is connected to everything else. So this idea that we're separate is hogwash. And science has proven it. Okay. All right. So the second invisible force is called plasma. And there's new discoveries about plasma over the last several years, even though it's been around. Several scientists have discovered it many years ago, but it was stifled. And now, for good reason, it's starting to come to the surface. There's two recent books about plasma. One is entitled The New Science of Heaven. They're in your resource guide. And the other one is called A Force. And it talks about consciousness and all that, and plasma, okay? But when Mike talked about how we communicate with the field, we're communicating to that current and that plasma, okay? And plasma, they will mirror what you think, what you believe, what you broadcast, okay? Positive or negative. So whatever you're putting out there, it's going to mirror back to you, okay? And part of it is to help you understand where you're going up here. And you can do it differently. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't know how you were going to get through it, but you went quiet, you went still, you started to trust your intuition, you started to trust how people, places, and things might have shown up to help you, and then all of a sudden you got through whatever you got through? You're connecting to the field. And the field hears that and says, oh, okay, you want this? We'll go that way with you. No problem. Okay. So it's on our side. It wants to help us. Okay. And the other thing they found with plasma, it's the cosmic mother. It has a very feminine quality because it's very supportive and receptive to us. Okay. And that's one thing to really think about. And the thing about plasma, it's a gas, but it conducts electricity. The other gases don't do that. And so it's one of the four states of matter, but they've given it its own special class because it's so unusual than the typical other gases of hydrogen and nitrogen and such. Okay. And so plasma is about love. And she's not good or bad, but she's deeply reflective, and she'll mirror back to you what you broadcast. Okay. How many of you have seen The Wizard of Oz? So plasma is like the wizard. It's going to give you, it's going to reflect back to you who you are. More importantly, it's going to reflect back to you who you can be. Can you handle that? Are you willing to go with that and make it happen? So think of plasma and this current field as your wizard. And it's going to say, no, that's not who you really are. Let me show you who you are. Okay. And in The Wizard of Oz, the very things that those characters didn't think they had, they all showed it. The thing that the wizard did was the wizard gave them the belief that you already have it, you just don't believe it. So can I believe that good things happen in my life? Can I believe that the universe is always going to take care of me, even though in the moment I'm not quite sure how? Can I believe that? Can I trust it? Can I work with it? And can I broadcast, yes, I know you will get me through this. I know this is what I have to do, my part in the co-creation, but I know you got my back. And that's what this is happening, okay? All right. The Higgs field is about mass and weight. So there's this invisible field that's all around us. It's kind of a backdrop. So the way we see light is we kind of have to have something dark with it in order to see light. And the Higgs field is kind of that, it's that background, okay? And so if I had a ping pong ball and a bowling ball and I tossed them down, the bowling ball is going to go faster and it's going to have more mass to it, so it's got more weight. the ping pong ball is going to kind of just flutter because it doesn't have much weight, so there's not much resistance. So we're at a party, and all the people in the party are the Higgs field, and a person that nobody shows up, they're not going to get much interaction with people. So there's not going to be much resistance. There's not going to be much mass. Okay, a celebrity comes in, all of a sudden everybody's mopping them. They're going to get a lot of resistance. The people in the party are the Higgs field, and the objects, the person that was the celebrity versus the person that was, that's kind of the ping pong ball versus the bowling ball. Okay, so the Higgs field, the proton, that light shows up at a Catholic mass one Sunday morning, and the priest says, "You're not welcomed here." And the Higgs proton says, "Without me, you can't have mass." Because that's what it's doing. It's creating mass. So everything you pick up, the more weight it is, that's the Higgs field telling you you're working against mass. Okay? The lighter something is, there's not that much resistance. So there's not as much mass. Okay? All right? And these three forces, the plasma, the Higgs field, and the Birkeland currents, it's a constant stream that never ends. And it's always there. And it surrounds everything. It is the basis of the universe. Okay? And so, and it's constantly impacting us more than we give it credit for. Okay? And science is more and more, they're starting to really verify this. Okay? This picture, the above part of it, is the Birkeland currents and with the plasma. The bottom half of the picture is your brain's neural network. Do you see any similarities? As above, so below. So everything that's in us, from our DNA out, is in the universe, and it's mirroring. So we are the universe, and the universe is us. The stars you see at night, the main elements of nitrogen, hydrogen, iron, and such, they're all in us. Our body, the blood in our plasma, blood has 55% of it is plasma. So they say that 99.9% of the universe is plasma. So it's literally a plasma field. So when you're connecting, like Mike said this morning, that what you're connecting to is the Higgs field, the plasma, and the Birkeland currents. Okay. So that's the, what did you call it? The divine substance. That's the substance. It's very invisible, but yet it exists. Okay. So since especially plasma is it's electricity, okay, and it causes lightning, the northern lights. It's in fluorescent lights and neon lights, okay, the filaments, okay, and the strongest organ in the body is the human heart. It is 5,000 times more powerful than this, and this is a piece of work, okay. So the more you're heart-centered, the more you connect to the field versus doing it strictly with your logic thing, okay? And that's why coming back to the heart is going to be that much more crucial from these days on, okay? So this plasma field, these currents, they have a consciousness. They're alive. And they're doing their thing, just as like you and I are doing our thing. Okay. The more we're aware of them, the more we can connect to them. Okay. So let's bring it back down to earth. We know that trees have a consciousness. They communicate with each other through the root systems. How do the trees know that when the days get shorter, that it's time to drop their leaves, change their colors. How do they know that? How do they know to come back when the daylights get stronger? How do they know that? Okay. They're connecting to the field, and the field is connecting to them. They're in tuned. They work it. They don't force it. They harmonize with it. That's the thing, is to harmonize with it. Don't force it. Harmonize. Let it take you. Okay. Let it guide you. Okay. There was a guy, Emoto, that did some fascinating research with water, and there's a gal, and Treese really connected with this energy, and this person, Veda Austin, she's done incredible research on the consciousness of water. Okay. So this is a picture of her and her mother. And what she would do is she'd have a petri dish of water. And every year at her mother's birthday, her mother had sent past, she would just send love and appreciation and such. And then she would put the dish in the freezer for 15, 20 minutes. You notice the heart in the dish?
You have to add the part where her mother used a signature when she was in college.
Yeah.
And for the life of her mother, she could never make a good circle.
Yeah.
So the outside
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
messy mom's
Yeah.
circle.
So just to those thoughts, those images, look what happened with the water. Okay. She's done other experiments. Her son, Led Zeppelin's song, Stairway to Heaven. So she has him play, she gets 4 different dishes. She plays Stairway to Heaven, puts them in the freezer. There's 4 different images of her stairway. Water is picking up on the vibration, the frequency of the music and such. Picture on the left is grief, sadness, loss. Picture on the right, acceptance. Okay. The 4 traits I call with love: understanding, acceptance, compassion, forgiveness. Acceptance, and I'll explain more, acceptance is the pivotal one. It's the most important of the 4 because it leads you to the compassion and the forgiveness. Okay. So the 4 different images of water sources: spring water, rainwater, filtered water versus tap water. Notice how the images get more distorted as we do it more synthetically, if you will. Okay. That's the consciousness. That's the invisible field that's communicating to us. Okay. So the 4 elements are trying to get our attention. Remember that you are water. 70% of you is water. Cry, cleanse, flow, let go. By the way, the soul would have no rainbows if the eyes shed no tears. And there's 2 things we do. We have the ability to cry and the ability to laugh. You laugh so hard that you start to what? Cry. And you cry so hard that you start to what? They're both very healing in their own right, and they're both very much needed. Okay. Remember that you are fire. Burn, tame, adapt, ignite. Go for it. No more holding back. Been there, done that. Remember that you are air. Observe, breathe, focus, make a decision, and go. Trust it. Remember that you are earth. Ground, give, build, and heal. And remember that you are spirit. Connect, listen, know, and be still. In this new consciousness, we're going from prove it to just knowing it and trusting that. Okay? And that's where science is meeting spirituality, from the proving it to just, oh, okay, let's just be okay with it is what it is. Okay? And that's part of the new consciousness. Whales and dolphins. Whales have power. The field of perception for a whale is almost the entire ocean. They can pick up other calls from thousands of miles away. Their voices carry just as far. There is a known phenomenon where humans spontaneously break down into tears of joy when hearing a whale calls. The reason for this is unknown. When whales call, they are bathing 70% of the earth in high frequency vibrations, known to heal and benefit all biological forms. These creatures play a specific role in the consciousness of the planet and humanity. I believe the reason that we get emotional is because they're tapping into a frequency that touches us in ways that are a little different than the average day, if you will. Okay. Just down the block is a thing called the Cartwheel Galaxy. It's 500 million light years away from Earth, just down the street. You've heard of the Hubble telescope. Teresa and I, we were on our way a number of years ago to Mount Shasta in Northern California. We stopped at a family campground, a rinky-dink place, nothing special. We come to find out that a woman is going to give a presentation that night who is helping build the Webb telescope. What are the odds? And the gal said that the Webb telescope would have like twice as many mirrors on it than the Hubble. Okay, so the picture on the right or the left is the Cartwheel Galaxy from the Hubble. Okay, the picture on the left is the same galaxy taken by the Webb. So do you see what the Hubble sees as all that dark, empty space? And the Webb says, excuse me, it's all full of gases and dust particles and things like that. Electrical currents, plasma, yada, yada. So there is no empty space out there, even though we might think there is, okay? So, we're going to come back to Earth a little bit. There's a term called entrainment. And entrainment basically means to follow or draw with. So as the cosmos, the far reaches, are doing their thing, they're expanding, they're ascending in their own right. Our Milky Way is ascending. Our sun is doing its thing as well. And the Earth is ascending as well. So since we are a part of all that, we too are following it. Okay, that's what entrainment means, to follow, to draw for or with, okay? And so we're literally being recalibrated from the DNA out to live in the fifth dimension and higher, okay? And we're struggling with that, understandably, because it's a higher frequency and vibration, and we're not quite used to it because the Earth is very dense. It's a heavy vibration. And we're trying to get used to this more lighter and but yet stronger, more vibrant frequencies, okay? And so it's taken us for a ride. How many of you, when you've taken a new medicine, your body for a time has to do what? Get used to it, because it's changing the frequency and such. And the body's like, whoa, what's this? Same thing going on from the cosmos, okay? So, 26,000 year cycle. Like I said earlier, it's the Earth's wobble going through all 12 constellations of the zodiac. Depending on where we're at, there's either a rise or fall in human consciousness. So for the last 10,000 years, we've been in the kingdom of the world, the material world, okay? Jesus came just shortly after the Piscean era. And because he had a consciousness that was far and beyond what most of humanity had at the time, we couldn't handle the guy. Okay, but he was ushering him and Mary Magdalene, and by the way, the two of them were the balance of the masculine and feminine, but because of the consciousness at the time, they had to make her into a prostitute. But she was as much of a wisdom keeper as he was, okay? And he understood that. That's why she was part of his circle. And the other disciples, they were threatened by that because that was the consciousness of the time. Women were second class, okay? So we're now in the age of Aquarius, so we're on the upswing, all right? And for the next 10,000 years or so, 14,000 years maybe, we're in the light. And the plasma and the current, the Kirtland currents and such, and the Higgs field, they are the ushering in of the light, okay? And that's what's happening. Our sun is bringing in more plasma, more light, okay, to move us into these higher dimensions because we're on the upswing now, okay? And remember I said it's not Jesus coming down, it's us going up in consciousness. How many of you have heard the word ascension? What the heck does it mean? My definitions, ascension is a process is occurring on a cosmic, planetary, and human level. So it's happening all through the cosmos. On a human level, it's the acceleration of vibrational energy and frequency to enhance spiritual learning and growth, creating an expansion in awareness, which creates a shift in human consciousness and behaviors. It's remembering and coming back to our spiritual and soul essence and connecting more, reconnecting more with Source, okay? My distinction between awareness and consciousness, because this is one of these terms, these two words seem to be used interchangeably, just like feelings and emotions are used interchangeably. My distinction, your soul is always aware. Consciousness is the mind interpreting that awareness in some shape, way, or form. Case in point, a person can be in a coma. Are they not still aware on the soul level? Yes, but they can't articulate anything, so they're not conscious. And then they wake up, and then they can tell you everything that happened. So awareness, we're always aware on the soul level. But consciousness to me is the ability to articulate in some shape, way, or form what I'm aware of. That's just me, okay? So, in this ascension process, anybody feel like it's a free-for-all? Like, what the hell is going on here? So, in the spiritual awakening process, it can be like going over the cliff. That all of a sudden, everything's out of sorts, and we don't know which end is up, and there's a lot of confusion. And you feel like things that were your norm are now totally turned upside down and inside out, okay? And everything about your life is totally out of sorts, but you know that there's somewhere you want to be that's better and more glorious and such, but you don't quite know what it is yet, okay? And so that spiritual awakening it can be a very difficult, confusing, scary, and whatever time. Medicate me. But it's just the awakening. And it's ugly sometimes. It's not fun. It's not pretty. There was a time, a number of years ago, 3 a.m, I'm wandering my apartment. I'm a lost soul. And I end up in my bathroom. And I'm looking at myself in the mirror. Pardon my French. And I said to myself, you are fucking nuts. 2 days later, I had a major epiphany. But in the moment, I was a loss, okay? The dark night of the soul, and here again, this is just me, I don't believe it's the dark night of the soul. I believe it's the dark night of the ego. Because in this spiritual awakening, the ego is going to be transformed. But the ego doesn't like to lose its grip or control. True? So it's going to have a whole lot of resistance and fight you tooth and nail with all this and wants you to go back to the old ways, the comfort zone, the familiar. But there's no safety or growth in the familiar, in the comfort. True? And so the dark night is an important part of getting us back to the light, individually and especially collective. We are in a time now where the shadow is being exposed big time, individually and collectively. And the shadow is what we've denied, repressed, or disowned, or projected onto someone or something else. And especially in our country right now, that's being exposed big time. True? And you're going to make a choice. You're either going to reconcile it and take responsibility for how you're showing up. And those that are taking responsibility for how they're showing up, they're going to respond to life and people. If you're not taking responsibility for how you're showing up, you're going to react to people in life. And do you see that playing out? And a shaman in a group in Peru, like the Hopi Indians, he said, a third of the population will be leaving, as in another third will go more nuts, and the other third will wake up. You choose which third you want to be a part of. Do you see that playing out? And all it is right now is some grapes are ripe, and other grapes are still stuck on the vine, such as the human journey and free will and such. Okay. So this is part of the ascension process. Don't deny it. Don't fight it. Play with it. Work it. Realize this too shall pass. Okay? Creation happens in the darkness. The Big Bang came from the darkness. A seed is planted in the soil, comes from the darkness. A fetus in a mother's womb spends 9 months in the darkness. So creation begins in the dark. Okay? And that's where we're at right now. We're in a very dark place, but we're also getting more and more in touch with the light. And more people are beginning to say, I want to do this differently. True? Okay. So as the cosmos has thrown a lot of energy and such at us, and it's taken us for a ride. The core of the earth has a heartbeat, has a pulse. And in the early 50s, a German physicist, Otto Schumann, discovered what's called the Schumann resonance, which is the earth heartbeat or pulse. It's a frequency. And when he first measured it, it was 7.83 hertz, which ironically is close to the frequency of Ohm. Okay? Gradually around the planet, since the early 50s, that frequency is getting stronger. Okay? And you see in the 20s, we had spikes of the 500s, 400s, and such. Okay? These past months or so, we were at 97 and 86 hertz just a week or so ago. Okay? And every once in a while, I take an average of a month. June was 36 hertz on an average. So 7.3 or 7.83 hertz to 36 on an average. And July was 49 hertz. So the frequency of the earth is steadily getting stronger. As above, so below. So we're literally being squeezed from the heavens and the earth to be recalibrated. And it's driving us wacky in a lot of ways. It's taking us places. True? How many of you woke up one morning and you're just totally out of sorts and you don't know why? That's part of it. Anxiety is becoming more prevalent than depression now because we're trying to get used to these energies and the body is getting all wigged out. Okay? So your brain waves are measured in hertz. And what you want to begin to do is train yourself to be in these waves. The gamma waves is where we're ultimately moving because that's the fifth dimension. And we're going to, when you're in that gamma wave, you can take in a lot of more info. You can process things quicker. You're kind of like the ever-ready battery, but yet still grounded and such. And you're still centered in all that. And it's the optimal of creativity and processing things and such. Okay? And that's where we're moving. But the body is not used to that yet, physically, emotionally, and such. And people that aren't in tune with this, they're doing some destructive things and wacky things to themselves and or other people because they don't understand it. And they're literally losing themselves. And then they make poor choices. So this is the connection between the resonance and our particular waves. Okay? Do you remember the scripture where Yeshua says, "In my Father's house are many mansions"? So his language was Aramaic. And the word house means the totality of the universe or the totality of us. And the word house you can interpret as dimensions. So the rephrase of that statement, in the totality of the universe, there are many dimensions above and beyond the third dimension. Okay. And so we're moving into those higher dimensions of the Father's house. Okay. And now the key is to lift the veil and to take off those rose-colored glasses, if you were like Mike and his thing, and to begin to see things as they really are, not so much how we're interpreting them. And that's where the possibilities. Can you question it? Can you challenge it? Don't condemn it, but can you question it and challenge it and then test it out? And the way we ultimately change and grow is when the mind and the body can allow for a different experience above and beyond what it's totally used to. Because all of you, through your ego mind, your wounded self, you've learned how to deal with life based on what you experienced when you were 5 years old, 10 years old. And you keep repeating that experience because that's what you believe should be happening. And the more you keep repeating that, the more you will keep having the same experience. And that's the pattern. When you can allow for a different experience and you tell that little boy or little girl and you, oh, you know, we can do it this way now. And then you test that out. You actually live that way so that you get a little different experience. And then that's how you give that little one a new job description or promotion. Does that make sense? Okay. But we have to question it. We have to challenge it. Don't condemn it. Okay. And the other piece in this is to realize that there's so much more that you're not seeing and interpreting and sensing. So I've been very intrigued over the years with near-death experiences and the similarities of what people experience. Particular day, Teresa and I were at Fountain Street Church, and it just so happened it was sunny out, and there's the stained glass windows, and I'm like, whoa, there's the third dimension and the fifth dimension. So the pane on the right is our third dimension. It's dull, it's dark, can't see it very vividly, so on. There's not much light. Pane on the left, whoa, it's a totally different experience. Okay. And many people that have a near-death experience, when they come back, they talk about having to come back into the density, into the heaviness, into the mass. Okay. Whereas when we're in the fifth dimension, we're much lighter. We see things with more vividness. We don't make things matter so much. We take things a lot lighter. We're more neutral, as Yeshua says. Okay. And we're more coming from love and compassion and forgiveness towards ourselves and someone or something else. Okay. That's where we're headed, folks. This is what our planet, it actually looks like this. We just don't see it that way. Okay. But that's where we're headed. You want to join the party? And the more we treat the earth with reverence rather than dominion, that rock has a consciousness. By the way, last week or whenever I was out walking the grounds and I went, that rock that's in the, we had a nice conversation. Okay. Make sense? Easy? No. Life is not meant to be easy, it's meant to be meaningful. So within the interpretations, it's about changing the meaning that you put to yourself and your experiences. Okay, and you've created that belief and that meaning. Okay, they added a sixth stage a number of years ago after Kubler-Ross passed. They picked up their research and they added a sixth stage after acceptance, which was the fifth stage. They added it, finding meaning. So from the acceptance, then you're more open to create a different possibility, a different meaning to your experience than you first interpreted or gave it. Does that make sense? So as we're going through this ascension, as these changes are happening all around us and within us, you're putting meanings to everything. Is it coming from love and acceptance, compassion, or is it coming from fear, resistance, the past? That's the key. As Yeshua says in A Course in Miracles, it's either love or fear. Fear is the absence of love. Judgment is the withholding of love toward yourself or someone else. The withholding of love. Okay. How many of you have heard the term heart coherence? Fascinating research. Okay. When we're wounded, understandably, the ego will begin to protect the wall of the heart and put a wall around emotionally. The medical community a number of years ago finally came up with a diagnosis called the sad or broken heart syndrome. It's literally an emotional heart attack. Not physically, but emotionally. Okay. And so the term heart coherence is about being in the energies, being heart-centered, and being in the energies of compassion, acceptance, gratitude, appreciation, and care. They often don't mention love, even though all those qualities are love. One of the reasons that there's an organization called HeartMath that's done incredible research around the heart. The reason they didn't use the word specifically love is because 2 days ago you could have had a breakup with a relationship or something. So the other words are more benign, where love it's got more of an impact, positive or negative. So heart coherence is about just being in your heart, meditating, being in gratitude, appreciation, compassion, and care towards yourself, towards the church, towards the community, towards the planet. And it's incredibly powerful because this is the most powerful organ in the body. That's why it's in the middle of the chakras. This is the dividing line between the earthly chakras and the heavenly chakras. Okay. So the more you can balance, and we're going from more of the masculine has been about the thinking state, the logic. The feminine is more about the feeling, the emotional state, the heart state. My distinction between emotions and feelings, emotions are of the body, emotion. The body is always communicating. It's always keeping score. A lot of my work, I ask the person, where do you sense it in the body? Because the body has the wisdom. The mind is a great deceiver, but the body will never lie. Okay, so the emotions are of the body. Your mind interprets the emotion as a feeling. That's just me. So the emotions of the body, feelings are of the mind. Okay. And we're going more in the plasma field and all that. It's taking us more into the emotional body and not be so ashamed or afraid of the feelings. You cannot heal what you do not feel. And I've had people in my work, they're kicking, screaming, yelling, crying. All of a sudden, poof, they busted open. Oh, I can do it this way now. Because they had to get into that crud to bust it open. You cannot heal what you don't feel. And we've been programmed to what? To deny this. But yet this is where the wisdom is. Okay? And then can the mind accept it and play with it, if you will? Okay? Rumi. Everyone sees the unseen in proportion to the clarity of his heart. And that depends on how much he has polished it. Whoever has polished it more sees more of the unseen forms become manifest to him. So the more you open this up, the more you will see what's always been there, but you didn't recognize it, you didn't own it, you didn't acknowledge it, even though it's been right in front of you the whole time. Okay? And so the more you open this up, trust me, the more you will see things in a totally different light. This gets us into a lot of trouble. Okay. All right. So, tips. Go to your handout. Go to the second page, and it says the shift in Piscean consciousness and to Aquarian. So when I talked about the waves, and we're now in Aquarius, so the consciousness, we're moving from fear to love, and these are very simplistic. We're going from separation to oneness, from exclusion to inclusion, from power over, which is what the system has done with people. It's created us to be fearful, and it has power over us, to power with. We're going from differences to similarities. The ego has a tendency to focus on the differences, how we're not alike, not so much how we are alike, okay? In my book, Just Be Love, I highlight the 14 peace prayers from around the world. I took a line from each of the prayers and I made it into one prayer because they're all saying the same thing. A little different vantage point, but you can see the similarities, okay? We're moving from the thinking state to the feeling intuitive state, being more heart-centered and connecting with that higher, wiser mind, our intuition, the third eye. When Jesus said, let the eye be single, and his awakening happened in the 40 days in the desert. And when he came back, he wasn't the same guy because he had been given his mission. And he understood then in those 40 days how things really operated, and that he was to teach that. The crucifixion was the energy of fear. We couldn't handle the guy. The resurrection was the energy of love. Okay? We're moving from prove it to just know it. And a true master does not convince or persuade. They just lay it out. They don't drill it, they don't demand it. They just lay it out. Everything I'm giving you, you're going to do with it what you choose. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Okay? We're moving from the masculine dominance And the feminine is rising in a whole bunch of ways now, okay? And like I said, it's going to be the balance now. It's not going to be either or. It will be the ether, which is the balance, coming back into harmony, okay? Competition, dominance, greed. And by the way, greed, my definition of greed is power without love and wisdom. So in the greed, there's absolutely very little power and very little wisdom, and it's all about me. Thank you very much. So we're moving from that greed, that competition and such, to more cooperation and caring and sharing. We're moving from materialism to just needing and using for sustain us without overdoing it. And in this country especially, look at, it's insane, okay? And people are just, going a program, okay? And we're going from, the ego is all about, I got to do, so then I have, and then I will be. Your soul is about you just be. And then the doing is different. You still do, but it's different because you already realize you have. And you are a spiritual being having this human experience. So just be. But we've been programmed to do, and have. How many of you have seen a U-Haul behind a hearse? Everything you're going to collect, you're not taking it with you. Okay. Moving from striving to allowing. Going with the divine flow. Focusing on outcomes at the expense of the process. Reverse that. Focus on the process. When you're in your process, the outcome will take care of itself. The ego is very outcome oriented. Your soul is very process oriented. Okay? Goal orientation versus connection relationship orientation. Find that balance. Most people, they have either one or the other that's a little more dominant. And are you more goal oriented or are you more relationship? Are you more like a shark? You want what you want, you don't care about the relationship, or are you more, I got to preserve the relationship at the expense of my own goals and needs? And what you want to do is balance that. Okay. And like I said, moving from needing to just being. Okay. The shift. The elders, like I said, from around the world over the years lately have been coming out and speaking of these times and what's needed. How many of you remember COVID? All right. So COVID, there was two things that came out of that for me. One was a quote, we were being shaken up to waken up. The other thing is we're moving from normal back to natural. Now, the thing that happened with COVID, when we had lockdown, the environment started to get cleaned up around the world. 30 seconds after lockdown was over, we went right back to it. We didn't learn the lesson. But COVID was the divine's way of saying, guys, come on. There was a lot of people that left. There was a lot of people that went nuts. And there was a lot of people that started to, oh, now wait a minute. How can I make this a better experience for myself? Okay. The shift to more heart-centered living, the end of secrets and manipulation. Imagine a government with compassion. Okay. Edgar Cayce and Nostradamus predicted a contentious leader in our country of gold and towers. The fall of Big Pharma, more equal distribution of resources. Electricity grids driven by magnetics, which is how the universe operates, by magnetics. And we have free energy, but what's happened to it? It's been stifled. because it agreed with the petroleum and pharmaceuticals and such. But it's there. Okay? It's there. Crops to feed everyone. Advanced healing through sound, light, frequency, and such. Okay? Science is uniting more with spirituality now. They used to be in different silos. And there were many scientists. Bruce Lipton was one of them. He didn't believe, he was an atheist big time. Now he's written, and he just published another one, he's written incredible books on the biology of belief. And he's got a new book out now challenging Darwin's theory. Okay? So he's become this enlightened being, even though 10 years ago or 20 years ago, he was as atheist as they came. So science is now merging with spirituality, which is very important. And imagine a world without war. There were 3 groups in the 60s, singing groups. First one, and they didn't write the song, but they sang it, and ironically, their name was The Fifth Dimension. They wrote The Age of Aquarius. The other 2 songs were by Beatles, and they were the spiritual ones in the group, and ironically, they both died early. George Harrison wrote Here Comes the Sun. You read the words, here we are. John Lennon writes Imagine. That's all about the Aquarian consciousness. So there's been numerous people and things over the years that have kind of been prophesizing and kind of laying the seeds, if you will, along the way. Okay, front page. Symptoms of ascension. Now, this is front and back, and you look at this list and you're like, oh my God, I'm doomed. I'm dying, you know. This is all part of the recalibration. The medical community, there's many things that people are going, their symptoms, and the medical community can't do anything. Teresa and I were in Hawaii. All of a sudden, near the end of the trip, my left ankle got really wigged out. I didn't trip or sprain it or whatever. We get back home, doctor puts me in a boot, 3 weeks. Not better. I do physical therapy, still not better. He ordered an MRI. In the meantime, I made the decision that I was going to give up my license and I wasn't going to do the physical office anymore. I get the MRI, the doctor takes me, he looks at the MRI and he says, Mr. Schroeder, based on the MRI, you need surgery. I said, Doc, I'm fine. I'm good. Once I made the decision, and the ankles are, metaphysically, the ankles are all about moving forward. So the body was telling me, come on, it's okay. You're going to make it. Okay? So these symptoms, listen to your body. Don't get all wigged out. What's the body want me to know? Literally ask that part of your body. What do you want me to know? What's this about? What do you want me to do? Okay? And then seek alternatives, especially sound or vibrational healing can be very helpful and important. Okay? All right. Tips for riding the wave. Think of an ocean. There's 3 ways you're going to deal with the waves. I'm either going to swim into the wave, and if I do that, I'll get swallowed up, tossed and turned, and it will end up back to shore. Or I swim away from the wave. It will catch up to me and spit me, and it'll take me back to shore. Or I could hop on the wave. I ride the energy. So the key is don't fight it, okay? And so it's very important that we do things to stay grounded, okay? Connect to the earth. Connect to the sunlight, okay? Do audio therapy with the different brain waves. Listen to that soft voice within. Listen to your heart and such. The divine attributes are power, love, and wisdom. They are connected to the 3 lines of the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's your true power, is accepting what is. Doesn't mean I like it or agree with it, but it is what it is. Okay? That's your true power. Second line of the prayer and the divine attribute is love, the courage to change what I can. The only person and thing I can change in my life is who? That's love, changing myself. Okay? And the third part and the divine attribute is wisdom. Third part of the prayer is the wisdom to know the difference, to discern what's mine to let go of and accept, it is what it is, versus what's mine to tackle and change from within. Okay? But I list a whole bunch of things you can do to ride the wave of this ascension process. Okay? Last thing I'd like to just focus on before we wrap it up. There's a concept called the star that I came up with a number of years ago. The star, the S is surrender. I surrender to divine will and way. Okay? I trust, and Mike talked about faith. So faith is an element of trust. Okay? And surrender is the release of the resistance. And it's focusing more on what I'm going to gain, not so much what I believe I'm going to lose or have to give up. That's true spiritual surrender. Ego's version of surrender is I'm going to lose, I'm doomed, I'm screwed. Soul's version is I let go with the intent of gaining more than I'm going to lose. Okay? And then you trust. Have faith that the universe has my back. And here's my acronym of faith: full acceptance in thy heart, not the head. And so the 2 key words are acceptance and the heart. Okay? The allow, you stand like a mountain, you flow like water. So you stand confident, resilient, like a mountain, but you flow, you're adapting, you're flexible like the water. In nature, wherever there's a mountain, there's water, because that's part of what makes the mountain. And when the water hits a rock, a barrier, an obstacle, it finds a way to get over, around, and through because it wants to get home to the ocean. So within things that happen in your life, can you stand firm, resilient, confident, but can you be flexible like the water and adapt and adjust? Give a little bit, whatever. Okay? All right. A channeled message that I got from Yeshua a number of years ago. And I'd like you to put your papers down and just close your eyes and get yourself centered. And I want you to take into these words, and the last line of the channel, I'm going to repeat it twice. Okay? And I want you to just take this into your heart, not so much your head. Okay? So close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. And imagine you're sitting with Yeshua and you hear these words from your beloved. You are my beloved child, forever innocent, forever loving, and forever loved. You are limitless and pure, just as the Creator from which you came. Therefore, awaken and return to me, for I am your true Father, Mother, and you are my beloved child. Therefore, awaken and return to me, for I am your true Father, Mother, and you are my beloved child. And just take a deep breath into your heart with that message. The truth will set you free. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. The sacred doesn't just happen when we heal an emotional wound. The sacred truly happens when we remember who we really are, always have been, and will be. Love, light, innocence, and goodness. And the new earth, the new humanity, is all about embracing that love and that light within you and then expressing that as God expresses it through you. Because we are all expressions of the divine. And we're each going to express it a little differently, but yet the more you come from that light and that truth and that innocence and that love, it makes a difference. Questions? Comments?
First, that's so beautiful. So I hate to ask an actual real, question because it's just so beautiful. But I didn't get what the R was in star.
Oh, yeah, I didn't put it. I'm sorry. Yeah, the R is receive. So when you surrender, you trust and allow, you receive. And here's the kicker with receive. You might not get what you want on the human level, but you will get exactly what you need for your soul growth and evolution. So the key, can I feel worthy and deserving and not kicking out because it doesn't fit my expectation? Because it's probably exactly what you needed for your soul growth and whatever. So that's the R, is can I receive and can I feel worthy and deserving with what I receive, especially if it's something that I really didn't expect or it didn't quite play out like I thought it would. So, okay, thanks for sorry about that. Anything else? Make sense? Helpful? Overwhelming? Play with it. Just play with it. Play with it. Yeah.
I'm just so amazed at how you took all of these complex areas and wove them in a way that really was understandable. And I had a lot of those pieces floating all over the place, but the way you wrapped it all together was
Yeah.
really genius.
Yeah. People have said I have a habit of putting things together that most people can't put together. And at 4 a.m, I had I should do it this way. So I was still playing with it a little bit, even at 4 a.m. Oh, by the way, how many of you are waking up in the middle of the night? So that's actually one of the signs of ascension, is you wake up between 2 and 4 in the morning. The key is if that happens, especially frequently, and a lot of people it's happening to, don't fight it. Get up. Try not to go on social media or whatever that, but just sit and listen, because one of the theories is the reason we're getting up is because literally the divine and the angels and such are knocking on our door, and they want us to listen. Because they don't sleep, so 2 in the morning is no big deal to them. Whereas what are you doing to me? Yeah.
What about repeatedly seeing 11:11
Ah,
on the clock?
yes.
12,
Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so you can Google on you type in spiritual meaning of whatever number, and it will. But you're being prompted, and the angels, your guides, and whatever are knocking on your door saying, "You're doing the right thing. Oh no, we'd like you to go a little this way, whatever." So yeah.
Meditate and
Yes.
ask,
Yes.
what are you trying to tell me?
Yes. Ask, and then look at how people, places, and things, how things will show up to give you the answers. You might see it on a billboard, somebody's license plate, a sticker. Somebody might say something. Especially if you keep seeing it time and time again, those particular numbers. Yeah, they're knocking on your door big time. And it's not to punish, it's not, they want to help us. So, yeah, good question. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.